Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the 157th episode of Hawk Blogger Mornings. I am Brian Nemhauser. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Hawk Blogger. And please, if you haven't already, open up Instagram, take a quick second, find Hawk Blogger, and click follow. Trying to grow that channel over there. And that will help get better community, better guests, better everything. So help us grow that channel, and I'd appreciate it. Today, we got kind of an announcement. I'm gonna see if make sure my guest here has the same reaction to this that I do. But we've been talking about it. We've been scheming behind the scenes. And Ray, I think we could tell folks that you're going to be a regular for the season. Is that a fair thing to commit to at this point?
Yeah, absolutely. I've enjoyed our conversations, and like I told you before, I just like your approach to it. You don't. A lot of guys get on and they think they know it all already. Really being open to learning and growing and understanding, and you seem just like a really cool dude. It's really cool to see you in the press box the other day. I didn't recognize you without your hat on. I was just like, wait a minute, he's sitting right in front of me. So I'm just excited to be able to help you do what you do, man. It's some guys have different approaches to it, and yours has been one that I can appreciate.
Man, well, that's praise that hits home, and I appreciate it. I really do. But I wasn't kidding, man, when I tweeted out like how cool it was for me to be able to, see you in person. Just because, I just had so much respect for you, listening to you for years, how you conducted your life, the things you've chosen to prioritize, then getting a chance to talk to you on this show. And, there's so many people that go through the experiences you've gone through in your life and just take on a persona of I am better than, different than, I am like, or even maybe in some cases it's just about being cautious because a lot of people want something from you, and
Right.
so people kind of get this standoffish thing. But you're just you, man. You're a genuine person. You're smart. You care about stuff. You love football. You like people. And, so for me, it's like, it's a gift. It's an absolute gift to be able to have this time.
Well, I'll put it this way. If I was, I know sometimes I can get opinionated. And
yeah, I like that.
But my dad once said that in a newspaper article that they said, tell me one thing we don't know about your son. And he said that dude would argue with a stop sign. And, and so I just like debating. I took argumentation and debate in college, and sometimes I take a side I don't even believe in just because I just want to argue with somebody. But then also, if I was a jerk to people, man, my dad would drop down from heaven and punch me right in the face. Like if so, he wasn't that way. I wasn't raised that way. I kind of meet people where they are until they show me there's something different, and then I kind of rock with it like that. And then I don't have a problem agreeing to disagree either. Like if we go at it for a little bit and I'm not buying what you're saying and you're not buying what I'm saying, like, okay, cool. That's fine. Like, let's keep it moving, move on to the next thing. So, but I do like to debate from time to time. If you see me debating a lot on social media, it's usually because I'm bored to death. And I'm like, okay, don't take it personally. Like
I hear you. I was similarly brought up in a house that there was just constant debate and disagreement. And I think I got even arguments, like debates are one thing, but arguments where it was a safe thing. Basically, you did not finish until everybody was able to walk away having resolved it. So it was like kind of like a knock, like a cage match, right? And so part of that was I just kind of learned, like, you work it through until you've worked it through, and you don't storm out of the room, and you don't get passive aggressive and be in a huff, and that's not normal. I found out when I got into the real world, people do not like conflict, dude. And so I think you and I maybe have a kindred spirits that way, and we don't always agree, which is also part of what I like about this.
Well, I'll give an example, like the play that Uchenna got hurt on.
I thought that was going to be one of them.
And so, like, I couldn't even have an opinion on it the way I wanted to because everybody went so hard one way.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, well, it's really not that either. You know what I'm saying? Like to me, it was just a bad timing of three people coming together in one spot at the same time. And then we got stuck on this stuff of someone saying like, oh, why would you do that block in the preseason? It's like, well, I promise you, if Uchenna had come free, he would not have let up on the quarterback. He'd have drilled him right into the ground. Yeah. And so then what? So not do that in the preseason either? Like, don't tackle in the preseason, don't block. Like, what are we gonna do? Play 2-hand tag in the preseason? So and so it just made it hard for me to have an opinion the way I wanted to have it because people were going so hard one way. And so then I'm like, you know what? Like, I'm going to defend this offensive lineman. Like, he's a good dude, and it was a bad play, and someone got hurt. But I mean, it's football, And so that's a situation where not necessarily the side I probably would have taken, but I wouldn't have gone so hard the other way either. So.
Yeah, let's take a moment on that play. I mean, we got a lot to cover, so we won't take too much time here. But I did see you speaking out on that. And for folks that are, I think most people are catching up. But if not, the play where Uchenna Nwosu got hurt, it was whistled for a cut block. And what everyone focused on was Wyatt Teller, the Browns guard, diving and hitting Nwosu's knee, and that was a cheap play. And I think I saw you say on social that like it actually wasn't him diving that was the penalty. It was the fact that there was a running back engaging with him at the top is what makes it a penalty. And this is just a normal play, and it was an unfortunate outcome. Is that like a fair representation of like what you?
Yeah, pretty much, because like first of all, even like the way you described it, the words are interesting because it wasn't an illegal cut block. There's a difference between a cut block and a chop block.
A chop block.
Well, CHOP.
Yeah.
Like most people like put those two together and think they're the same. A chop block, illegal chop block, is when one offensive player is engaging a defender on his lower body at the same time another offensive player is engaging him up top. So you can't have those two engagements happening at the same time. That's called an illegal chop block. And that's what was called. A cut block is like a legal play in football where you can dive at a dude's lower body to cut him down, and so if you take the running back out of that picture, it's a legal block, and it's just unfortunate that Uchenna got hurt. And then some people will say like, well, the running back was headed to block the guy. Well, not necessarily, because usually, even if you want to call it a boot action, the guard that's pulling, his responsibility is an end man on the line of scrimmage. And so Uchenna was an end man on the line of scrimmage, and usually the running back is doing a fake and is holding the second level defender right there. And then but what happened was the fake didn't hold Uchenna. Like it usually you kind of hesitate for a second, and then the lineman gets out, he gets around, try to hook you and kind of hold you in the spot right there. But he just came straight up the field and was in the backfield closer to the quarterback faster than what they anticipated. And so then as an offensive lineman, people don't understand like things be moving like this fast. Mm-hmm. And you're going like, oh, well, in that situation, he should have went like, oh, well, wait a minute. This is a preseason game, and I'm just going to let him hit the quarterback, and I'm just not even going to attempt to block him at all at anything. Like, it just doesn't work like that, dude. You don't play in the matrix, as Dave Wyman would say. And things happen really, really quickly. Unfortunately, Uchenna got hurt, and hopefully he can get back sooner than he can. But all the smoke that this dude was taking was just unnecessary, and then just ridiculous to say, like, why do that block in the preseason? Well, then why tackle? Why sack the quarterback? Why block anybody? Like our DBs took some nice shots on some dudes this preseason. And so, like, well, why would they do that? You know what I'm saying? Like, so if you want to play 7-on-7, then that's a different thing. If you want to do flag football, that's a different thing. If you want to play 2-hand tag, that's a different thing. This is a physical, violent game where your chances of getting hurt are pretty high. And so
yes.
Sometimes unfortunate things are going to happen.
My only question there, and then we'll move on to the real topics of the day, are in the day and age in the NFL where you've got rules keeping defensive players from, literally play before, Uchenna was flagged because he hit the quarterback kind of below the waist, like was falling down. It wasn't diving at it, just kind of hit him below the waist. That's a roughing the passer. At age where, you can't hit a defenseless receiver, you can't do hip drop tackles anymore, all meant to help preserve the health of players. Most of it helped to preserve offensive players' health. Mm-hmm. It feels odd to me that it is a legal play. And I'm not debating what you said. It feels odd that there is a legal play where you can have 330-pound offensive linemen leading with their helmet to the knees of defensive players. Like that feels.
What's the difference between that and a tackle?
I don't know, man. I guess
there's no difference. It's an offensive lineman tackling a defensive guy that doesn't have a football in his hand. Like that's the only difference.
Yeah.
If Charbonnet came running through the hole and the linebacker was coming from one side to tackle him and he dove and hit him in the knee, what's the difference? There's no difference. I'm not a fan of all the rules either. That protect the offensive players. But in this situation, like I just don't even think that apply. And then even like the description of it's funny how like, and I'm not saying you're doing this, but how people will minimize one thing and maximize the other thing.
Yeah.
Because if I look at Uchenna rushing the quarterback, he wasn't falling into the quarterback. He dove to make a tackle and he landed, somewhere in the knee area, which is a penalty.
Uh-huh.
But everyone is going like, oh well, no, he didn't mean to do that. But and in the preseason game, we want him to sack the quarterback. So why shouldn't he be able to dive at the quarterback and sack the quarterback? But then when it happened to your player and he got hurt, it's like, oh my God, that's the most egregious thing in the history of the world. And it's just like, no, it wasn't. Like it was just really unfortunate timing of trying to execute a block and one of our better players got hurt. And I'm not sticking up and saying like, hey, like I want Uchenna to get hurt and all that kind of stuff. But that's the risk you take when you play starters in the preseason or play anybody in the preseason. And then when you play this game, there's a risk of getting hurt. And so it's just really hard for me to draw like a correlation between like, oh, well, an offensive lineman shouldn't be able to cut a defensive player, but a defensive player can cut down an offensive player. It's like I don't know. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Yeah. Well, those are fair points, and that's why I always enjoy the conversation. So before we continue, I do want to just make sure everybody remembers, if you haven't already signed up at ftnfantasy.com, using promo code HAWKS saves you 15%. This episode is brought to you by FTN Fantasy, so make sure to support this great sponsor. And that's the place you get all the DVOA information. That's the place you get all the cheat sheets for your fantasy football drafts. It's the place that you get all the matchups stuff. If you're interested in sports betting, starting next week, there'll be information there. I am not a person who bets. I am not a person who plays fantasy football, but I am still a subscriber to FTN because I think the data there is fantastic. We'll probably use it in some of these Big Ray rewinds. You can get information about whether how they play against cover 0, cover 1, cover 3, cover 6. You can get how they play in wind versus in rain, in any situation. It is for less than $8 a month. I'm telling you, there's not a better deal out there to get all the NFL data you're going to want. So head over to ftmfantasy.com, use promo code HAWKS. Now, Ray, let's start before we get into the official Big Ray's Rewind. And for folks, the initial expectation is we're going to try to do this every other week. So and I think we'll probably try to make it Wednesdays. We'll see how it works with Ray's schedule, but we'll try to make this something that we can all look forward to together. And we're going to go through some film from the game this weekend. And I've got it working, Ray, where you'll be able to see and highlight things for you. I promise it'll work today. It's going to be great. But let's talk about the cutdown. And even before we get into talking about the specific players and the implications, you were a first-round pick. You probably didn't have a lot of camps where you were worried about whether you were going to make the squad or not. What's it like? Like as that day approaches and you've been, going through sweating and hitting and with all these guys that that their dreams are potentially at risk, but you're also like, you're not going to be the one cut. So like, what's the dynamic there as that day kind of approaches?
Yeah, it was always hard for me, man, because I was the type of player that if a young player came to me, on the offensive defensive line, and was trying to get all the help they could, stay after practice with them, watch film with them, and all that kind of stuff. If they came and asked for that type of help, like I'd worked with them. Like I just thought like this opportunity is so incredible that it's so life-changing that if someone is willing to put in that type of effort, then I'm willing to help them do it. And I knew that I was operating from a position of like privilege, if you want to say, because I was a first-round draft pick. I'm not getting cut unless I'm just like dirt bad. You know what I'm saying? And even with that, someone else is going to pick me up to give me another chance. And so I knew that I had certain privilege that they didn't have. And so then you end up becoming good friends with them, you know, and you're like cheering for them. You want them to succeed and stuff like that. And then you start doing the count. Like, you know, we had 4 preseason games, about maybe that halfway through that third week of practice, dudes are already counting like, oh, we got 8 receivers. We're going to keep 6. So what do I fit in? I have this many offensive line. And so that's when it gets a little crazy because they come to you and they're like, hey, what do you think? And blah, blah, blah. And you don't know, you know, and it's really hard, you know. And I always hated being around the locker room like during those times because some dudes can take it really cool and they kind of understand where they are in the process, and other guys take it really hard. Like I've been in locker rooms where we had to call the cops to get someone out of the locker room because they just feel like they should have been cut and they should have made the team, and you know, and then they never played again. You know what I'm saying? So
wow.
And so it is for a person that never really faced that. It's hard to see guys, because some guys, you know, like, oh, that guy's going to get another chance somewhere. But then there's other guys, you know, where like, yeah, this is it for that dude. Like he just, for whatever reason, doesn't have it. The numbers game, size, speed, whatever it is. Like it's just like, you know, that guy's not going to make it. And that's really hard to be around. You know, it's not a big celebratory feeling.
Yeah, that's one of the things that's kind of fascinating about this moment is that some guys' dreams are coming true. Mm-hmm. And some guys' dreams are ending, and it's all happening in the same space. And so, you know, I'm curious, you know, the dream ending kind of thing can come in 2 ways, right? One, it can be a young guy that's, you know, just can't quite make it, and maybe they'll never make it, but there's probably some hope that they can still make a practice squad or something like that. So maybe it's not totally over. And then there's the veteran who's maybe just lost the step, and you know, everyone kind of can tell which was kind of the tougher one to kind of be around.
Well, I will say, just speaking from my own experience, being the older dude and like realizing like this is just not it. Like I wasn't gonna get cut, but I just knew I wasn't an NFL player anymore. Like I can remember being a young guy sitting in the Seahawks meeting room, and we had a couple older offensive linemen that probably didn't make the team, but watching film, I would go like, man, like, why is this guy still playing? Like he can't move, you know, like he's strong, you know, experience and all this stuff, but he just can't move anymore. And then I remember looking at my own film going, why is that dude still playing? He can't move anymore. And it was one of the hardest realizations in my athletic career, because then I knew, right? I went to the offensive line coach during training camp, and I said, hey, man, can I just be in the meeting room by myself tonight? Like, I just want to watch the film by myself. And I went and watched the film, and the first thing that came to my mind was, man, this dude can't move anymore. And so pretty much that night, I decided to retire, because I was like, I can go out here and like get treatment every day, miss, you know, 2 practices a week, you know, suit up for some games, play in some games, but it's going to be brutal. It's going to be painful. And I don't know that I can be effective, because I just can't move the way I used to move. And it was really hard to kind of come to that realization and then go to the team and say, hey, man, I'm out. Like, I just can't do it anymore. And so sometimes that is happening too. Like when you're an older player and you think that you can still do it, but then the tape is saying that you really can't. And so that's one thing. And so it can be really, I mean, I started playing football when I was 6, and I played every year until I was 32 years old. And so when people say like, well, you're not just a football player. Well, if you were a doctor that long, you would call yourself that's what you would identify as a doctor. You know, if you're an attorney, you would do that. So like, yeah, I was a football player. I did some other things, but man, like I was a football player. That's what I was. That's what I wanted to do. That's what I lived to do. Like that's all I ever wanted to do. And so it's kind of hard to come to the end of that, no matter if you're the young dude or the old dude. Obviously today they do a better job in the league of like educating guys and the college are doing better, getting guys graduated so that they have other opportunities and things like that than when I played. But it's still hard. It's hard, man, because you've been the best football player in your little circle of friends forever. And now all of a sudden your circle of friends, you don't make it. That's tough to deal with.
Yeah. We got a comment here from Smokecock saying, Brian, love the Big Rays Rewind. Great title. I don't get to take credit for this. There's actually a YouTube member who suggested this title, and I love it. So Big Rays Rewind is it going forward. We're going to make it a thing. Also want to thank Isaac for gifting 5 Hawk Blogger memberships. Again, my favorite thing that people do. Isaac's been incredibly generous. And if you are someone who's getting a free membership because Isaac's giving them out or somebody else is giving them out, pay it forward, man. It's a great way to make sure that we're growing the community and bringing in generous, kind, friendly people, because that is the one major rule here is we're going to have fun together. We're going to treat each other well, and we're going to be passionate about talks. It's going to get harder when the season comes around, I'm telling you, because it gets spicy. It does. Yeah. I'll get spicy, but for we're going to do our best to make sure we got a lot of really good people in the crew. So thank you, Isaac, for that. Ray, one of the things that I've noticed over the years, and you call me on it if I'm off on this, but there's been this phenomenon I've seen where players like rookies get into OTAs camp, whatever, and veterans know really quickly if someone's going to be a player. Like they seem to recognize really quickly before anything else has really happened. Like, ooh, that guy's a player. And I have 2 questions for you. One, is that true? And 2, the kind of underlying implication for this is like, there's a lot of these guys that kind of come out of nowhere to show out in camp at different positions. Is there a specific position that you find is harder to scout or something to where, guys just, it's maybe more normal to see, an undrafted offensive lineman or an undrafted, linebacker or whatever show out because like they just couldn't figure it out with scouting?
Yeah. I think what you're asking me is like when some like maybe an undrafted position comes to camp and does something and people are going like, man, this dude's a baller, and you think like, oh, because they weren't drafted, maybe the scouting team missed or something.
Yeah.
There's so many other factors that go into why a person gets drafted or not drafted, and then the fact that they're in the camp means that they saw something. You know what I'm saying? And so, and then to me, like, I'm more surprised when like skilled dudes are undrafted skilled dudes make rosters and then come and just do amazing things, because a lot of it is like speed, quickness, like, if you're a receiver, being able to get open, if you're a running back, make people miss, all that kind of stuff. And it seems like that's easy to scout. Offensive line, it doesn't surprise me when undrafted guys make the team, because there's so many unseen skills that it take to be an offensive lineman that if you don't have a big name and people don't know who you are and stuff like that, or maybe you're like Jarrell and you play at a smaller league and you have to figure out how does that translate to the next league, to this league. That's a little harder to. If offensive line play, it's a little easier to do to me, and so you can see a guy that goes like, oh man, this guy's maybe not a draft prospect, but he's a guy that could possibly come on and be a walk on basically, and make the team. I've played with several offensive linemen that way. One of the guys that replaced me in Seattle when I left came to us as an undrafted defensive lineman, but they knew that he had more upside as an offensive lineman, and so I helped coach him up, and he ended up starting for a couple of years here with Seattle. But I am more surprised when I see like a skilled dude, especially like a defensive back, because defensive back is so difficult to play, man. It's like playing in space against some of the best athletes on the field, and they know where they're going, and you have to react to where they're going. I don't think people understand how hard it is to play. So when undrafted or really low draft pick defensive backs make a team, that's impressive to me.
So let's talk about the Seahawks roster. And, it came out yesterday, late as usual. And, there's a lot of interesting, I think, storylines in there. And honestly, you got to start with the offensive line. I mean, I think that is where maybe some of the biggest surprises were. You had 11 guys kept on the offensive line, which is a big number. And I'm not sure it's going to stay that number. You had 3 centers, and not only 3 centers, but 3 guys that exclusively, essentially, are going to play center. And then you have only really a couple of backup tackles in Stone Forsythe and Mike Jarrell. Jarrell's one of these late round rookies. And Satoa Lamea. So you got the 2 6-round. I remember very early on, you're like, usually you take a flyer on a couple of late round linemen, probably only going to hit on one,
right?
And it turns out, I thought for sure you were going to be right that only one of them would make it, and it would be Jarrell, if that. Ended up being both of them. And then you got a guy like McClendon Curtis, who I think we all thought was going to make the team, doesn't even make the initial roster. So of all those stories, which are the ones that initially jumped out to you?
Well, it did surprise me that all the rookie linemen made the team, but then when I think about it, like no veteran came in and outplayed him. I think Curtis had his chance when they had him at guard, but then he got exposed when they moved him to tackle. Like he wasn't very athletic, couldn't bend very well. Speed rush was killing him. He did some good stuff in the running game, but then as he was playing tackle, these other dudes were excelling, in the guard spot, and so he lost his. I think he lost his chance to be part of that battle between Tomlinson, Bradford, and Haynes, and so then he became the odd tackle out. I do think that sometimes when I work with young offensive linemen, I like to get them around like 8th grade or 9th grade when they haven't learned really bad habits, and you can coach them up the way you want, the way you want them to coach them up and what you think is the right way. And so when I look at the young offensive linemen they have, that's what I'm thinking that the Seahawks are doing. I do know that they're hedging their bets a little bit at the tackle spot because, you don't know what's happening with Big Abe. George has been hurt a little bit. So, Jarrell, makes the roster. He looks better at tackle than he does at guard, that kind of stuff. So, but I do think part of the youth movement could be that they like the base of what they have in those players, and they want to bring them up in their system the way they want them to play, and so you have a chance to, like, if I'm 7 years in the league and I'm coming to that, I'm gonna be a little bit stuck in my ways. Like I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna try as best to do what you're coaching me to do, but I'm also gonna rely on what I know works, for me, and so sometimes it's a little harder to kind of reel those guys in. And then, like I said, none of those guys really like jumped off the screen to say like, hey, like I've been around this long, you need to keep me over that guy. So I think that's how that happened at the offensive line spot.
With the center spot, I mean, obviously Oluwatimi makes it, and then Jalen Sundell makes it, and Connor Williams. I mean, I think the assumption is they're doing that because they want a few more reps with Connor Williams to see if he's really ready. Do you expect that they will roll with 3 centers by the time even the first game comes?
I don't always get into like trying to get into their mindsets around that kind of stuff. But I will say that I've never been on a team that had 3 exclusive centers ever. Yeah. I've been on some teams that had 2 centers and a guard that could play center, but never just 3 exclusive centers. And so, there's a couple things going on there. Like you said, Connor Williams, how's he going to come back? If he may come back and play a little bit and then be like, oh man, like I'm a little nicked up and I need to take some time off, or you know what I'm saying? So you still need to have some backup there. It seems to me like they probably would have preferred to have a swing guard center person, but I think Sundell just kind of impressed them enough that they just thought like, hey, we can keep keep this guy around. If Olu has to play, then he has a backup kind of thing. It did surprise me that 11 offensive linemen, I think it is. Normally it's like 9-ish.
Yeah.
And so it did surprise me. But I do think some of that, though, is they're kind of hedging their bets on the injury situation at the guard, at the center and at the tackle spot.
We talked a little bit about Mike Jarrell in the past, and I think I'm a fond of him. I'm fond of his story, and I've been impressed by what I've seen as an amateur. What's your take on Jarrell now that you've seen a little bit more of him?
Well, when they first started preseason camp, like the mini camps and things, and they were playing him at guard, he just didn't look like a natural guard to me. And so I wasn't really high on him. He seemed like a big, huge project to play guard in this league. But then when they put the pads on and they were putting him at tackle, he just looks more natural. The angles that he takes, the flexibility in his body, his demeanor and all that kind of stuff is just different, at tackle. And maybe it's because that's where he's comfortable. Maybe he's just kind of in his head a little bit at the guard spot. But he is a cool story. I played with a guy that they drafted here, Jeff Blackshear, was a guard from Louisiana Tech or like some really small school, and but went to college as a tight end, had a couple injuries, put on some weight, got strong as all get out, and then they moved him to guard, and so he ended up being like a Pro Bowl type guard here for the Seahawks, and he was on the Super Bowl team playing guard beside Jonathan Ogden on the Baltimore Raven team. And so he was able to make that jump. He was a big, strong dude. And I think Jarrell, with some reps and stuff, intentional reps, not just reps for the sakes of rep, can build a spot for himself. I don't know if he's like someone that's going to be a starter in the next 2 years, but he could be certainly a good backup guy that's on his way to, being a starter in the league somewhere.
All right, let's move off of offensive line and just other storylines. Anything else jump out? I got some ones to talk to you about, but anything else that just jumped out at you when you heard about who was cut, who made it, that kind of thing?
The only there's one player that I was just watching to hope that he made a team, and that was Miles Adams, because Miles Adams is a quiet dude, quiet in that you don't hear his name a lot. They talk about Reed, they talk about Big Cat and Byron Murphy and all the other people along that defensive line. But since Miles Adams has been here, every time he gets in the game, if he gets more than 4 plays, he's going to make 1 play. I promise you. It's going to be a tackle for a loss, or it's going to be tackle at the line of scrimmage, knock down a pass, pressure the quarterback, something like that. And to me, we get sometimes in the league, we get so hung up on you're either the superstar or you're trash. But what holds the locker room together are the dudes like Miles. They're the middle class of the locker room, the glue that holds a team together. And the more really good players that you have that can be the glue that holds a team together, I think you kind of set yourself up to be a really good football team, And so I was honest to God, maybe he and Kenny McIntosh were the only 2 people that I was looking for to see if they were going to be on the team. And I was pretty sure they were going to be on the team. But, sometimes with Miles, with all the people they had on the defensive line and stuff, I could see them maybe, moving past him. But even in the preseason, when he got in, he made plays. And so I was just excited to see him on the team. So that's as far as watching the whole waiver wire, cut wire, and all that kind of, those are the only 2 names I was looking for, honestly.
That's cool. Yeah. I mean, Miles Adams has been, he's absolutely been a playmaker on the defensive line. And I question about exactly how he'd fit into Mike Macdonald's scheme, because he's not the biggest guy, and Macdonald usually has pretty big guys along the line. We'll see. That's one player that I have my eye on for. I think they're still looking for a backup nose tackle, and I think that could come at his expense. But he's certainly a guy that either will be on this roster or on the practice squad unless someone else snatches him up. So
it's to me, one of the important things about making it in this league is just owning your role. Some guys just refuse to do it, and they're always looking over their shoulder I should be in that position or whatever it is. And when you're doing that, you're not really focusing on what's going to make you the best at what they're asking you to do. And Miles has done that. Like he goes like, okay, I know I'm not the starter dude, but this is what they're asking me to do when I'm in there, and he masters in it. Like he does a really good job. It's hard to get rid of dudes like that, And I could see if he was getting blown off the ball, 75% of the time, but that's not happening either, And so sometimes you can look at the size, or you can have a preconceived idea of what a person is until you actually see them do what they do. And he's done a really good job of, like my agent represented baseball players too. And he had this one baseball player in AAA, and was a really good pitcher, but it was always focused on the show. And then he would have bad games, and the other dudes below him would be jump over him. And so then my agent one day said, "Hey man, can you just talk to him?" And so I'm like, "Well, tell me the story." Like, I don't know baseball. I said, but I know sports. And so I just say, "Hey man, like, why don't you just focus on being a AAA pitcher for like the next, half the season? Like, don't focus on getting to the league or to the show or nothing. Just focus on being the best AAA pitcher in the league." And then when he was able to do that, then he got a shot, at the show. And so sometimes that happens when you have on a football team or any team. Like, players want, you want the second team dude want to be the first team dude. And it's like, well, focus on being the best second team dude, and then you'll probably get your chance to be a starter somewhere when the time comes up. And so Miles does a good job of going like, this is what you're asking me to do. I'm gonna be the best at it, and that's gonna keep me in the NFL and make me valuable to a team.
A couple other storylines that stood out to me, I'm curious your thoughts on. One, Uchenna Nwosu. We talked about his injury, and it came out that an MCL sprain, 2 to 6 weeks recovery. It sounded like IR was a possibility. As of now, they have not put him on IR. He tweeted out BRB, right? So I guess my read of this is, don't exhale just yet. They're probably taking their time to see how he recovers, because they can still put him on IR if they chose to. But it's better than them having already made the decision that he's out for the first 4 weeks. What was your kind of take when you saw that?
Well, the way I took it is that it could be that it just wasn't as serious as they thought. Like I played in when I was with the Lions, talking about knowing your role. There was a fumble. And I thought, like, oh, man, I'm about to be Earl Campbell. And I picked the ball up. And I started running. And I got tackled by Kurt Schultz, who played, I think, at Eastern or Western Washington, and then played, so he used to wear the little helmet thing before they were popular. Put his helmet right on my knee. Bop! Knocked me out of bounds. And sprained my MCL. And so I missed 1 week, and then the next week was a bye week. And then I'm like, I think I'm good. And so I put a brace on and played 1 week with a brace on. And then the next week I took the brace off and played the rest. It didn't bother me the rest of the season. So, the thing about those MCL sprains, it sounds like a weird range from 2 to 6 weeks. But depending on the severity of it, it can be 2 weeks or it could be 6 weeks. So I think they're giving themselves a chance, because either way you go, like you said, if they do it before the season, put him on IR, he's going to miss 4 games anyway. So you have time before you do that. And so hopefully it's the of the 2 week kind, and not the 4 to 6 week kind.
That'd be great. I mean, he's clearly a key part of the team, not just for his play on the field, but just for his locker room presence and as a leader. And
funny story though. Just let me finish. Kurt Schultz was with the Buffalo Bills. The next season, we signed him as a safety in Detroit. And so I didn't say much to him in the locker room or whatever. First day of pads, I don't know what the play was. I just went right to him and just drilled him to the ground and was just like, bop, bop, bop. And he's like, what, like, what's going on? And I'm like, dude, like, you could have just pushed me out of bounds, man. You like hit me in the knee, like that's my livelihood. You know what I'm saying? Like, and he's like, man, you're a big dude. Like, how was I supposed to get you down? And so I was just like, wow. And like everyone's looking at me like, what the heck are you doing, Ray? I'm like, man, this dude like could have ended my career last year, So it was like, and then fast forward to about 3 years ago, I'm at a bar down in Kirkland, and the bartender comes up, hey, this guy over here said he knows you and he wants to buy you a drink. And I look over my shoulder, Kurt Schultz.
No way.
Like, what are you doing here? So it was kind of, I'm like, you want to fight again? No, but yeah, funny MCL sprain story.
I love that, man. I love that. The only other one that I was going to bring up before we get into actually looking at some of these plays, Artie Burns. So he also was injured and was carted off and, emotional, and like they ended up terminating his contract. And this is a guy that was due over $1 million and then essentially walks away with $75,000. You know, fans don't appreciate like these guys that are good enough to be, I mean, he was going to be a prominent part of that secondary one day, 1 minute. And then I don't know what his injury is. We haven't heard anything. I don't know if we'll hear anything. He may not. And he's around 30 years old. He's a cornerback. He'll probably come back, but you don't know. Like, this could be it.
Right.
So like, talk a little bit about, you talk about the middle class. I think Artie Burns is a good example of that as well.
Yeah. Well, that's why, like, there was a fan I was arguing with on social media about players, how much money they make. And I'm like, well, in the grand scheme of things, they just signed like a 77 or whatever $1 billion TV deal. And these dudes are putting their lives on the line, and it's a really short window. You know what I'm saying? Like, the average career is only like 3.5 years. Some people think that you play forever and you make $1 billion and you're good for the rest of your life. Most of the dudes cycling, 80% of the guys cycling out of the league never make, well, maybe nowadays, but for a while, never make $1 million or at least have $1 million saved. And their career is only 3.5 years. So most rosters in 3.5 years, they completely cycle through, unless you're the star quarterback, receiver, running back, that person. But a lot of the middle class guys cycle out every 3.5 years, and most of them never come back. And so for a guy like Artie, where you're probably planning on like how you're gonna manage that $1 million or whatever he's gonna get for the year, and now he's walking away with $75,000. And so I don't think that, even like some of our radio hosts will be like, oh, well, woe is me. Like, he made, he's going to be good with the money. Money ain't everything, dog. Like, money can solve a lot of problems, but it can create a lot of problems, and it doesn't solve all the problems. And it doesn't solve some of the biggest problems in your life. Like, I promise you, when I was struggling with the mental health stuff, the money wouldn't have mattered. It doesn't matter. Like, it wasn't going to heal what was happening with me and the things I've been through. So sometimes, we just, we forget the humanity of people. And that's part of the reason I do my podcast, is because we look at athletes as gladiators, or you shouldn't be complaining, or you're making this kind of money. It's hard work. And I hate when people are like, oh, now you got to get a real job. Go try playing professional sports and tell me it's not a real job. You know what I'm saying? It's realer than any job you probably can imagine, other than, been in the military or something. So I'm telling you, and so it's a guy like Artie Burns. You feel bad for him because he probably had a really good shot at making the team and then making some good money. And now he's on the outside looking in, possibly, depending, like the way he moved, it almost looked like a what do you call it? Achilles tendon.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering about.
And so that could be a career ender for him, and his last year, he didn't even get to leave on his own terms and got a third or, like, of the money that he was supposed to make, so
not even
so I'm not asking people that you got to like cry, tears for the players, but have a better understanding of what's happening, what they're going through, and just how short this career is, and like, I think there was a stat one time that said only about 8,000 of like the 20 or 30,000 NFL football players have ever played more than 8 years. And so you think like these people are playing a really long time. That's a small number of people that have played that long, and so you feel for a guy like Artie, who's worked hard and been a couple different places and seemed like he was making a way for himself here.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely, most of my life as a fan, I saw players as players, and it's all about what it meant for the team and how the team was going to win or lose. And so you see Artie Burns go down, and you're like, oh man, he was going to play a big role. I'm bummed we're not going to have that. But you peel back and you look at the person and what he's going through and his individual story within all these other stories. It's a pretty tough one, man. And so you look at the way the contracts are done, and people talk about players holding out and they're selfish, and like, we won't get into that whole thing. We'll save it for another time. But
Yeah.
I very much have moved very much toward the player side of a lot of these things. And, it's also getting to know people that have been through it and really seeing guys that never got even a contract, let alone, playing for their one. So it's, doing this all very publicly in front of everybody, having everybody know all your business, having every friend and family member know, like, they don't look you in the eye after, like there's all sorts of stuff that people just don't think about. It's very tough. It's a very tough situation. So I wish Artie Burns nothing but the best. Hopefully it's not an Achilles. Hopefully we find out maybe he can come back later this season, but that one stuck out to me as well. All right, before we get into the film breakdown, we got one quick super chat here from Isaac. It says, feels like people talking about wide receivers being so abundant because of the proliferation of 7-on-7, which is partly why there's scarcity of O linemen, maybe part of why we kept 11. I don't know. I'll just say I don't think so. I would not put a lot of stock in the 11 number. I don't think it's going to be 11 for very long. I think we literally waiver stuff is going to happen in 10 minutes. We'll get word about that. And by the end of the day, by midday, by tomorrow, we could very easily have 10 offensive linemen. By Monday of next week, we could have 10 offense. So the Seahawks, I would be very surprised if they run the year with 11 offensive linemen.
Yeah, and even like speaking to that comment, like 7-on-7 isn't the reason there's more offensive linemen. I mean, more receivers in the league. There's more receivers in the league because the league has become a passing league. So you want to get as many receivers on the field as you possibly can. And then to me, like John Snyder kind of mentioned this the other day about the scarcity of like the offensive linemen are a dying breed. And it's a dying breed because you're not putting life in them. Like no one's teaching them how to do anything but stand in front of somebody for 2 seconds in college. And then you come to the NFL and you got to stand in front of them for 3.5, 4 seconds, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it's a lot of time. And they can't do it. The ball is like coming out so fast in college and stuff that learning the skill and trade of being an offensive lineman is suffering because of it. It has been for a long time. Like ever since they started minimizing the contact in mini camps and things like that, the offensive line play has gone down because it's one of those positions where if you don't know how to engage a block, move through the block and finish a block, it's kind of hard to just go from shoulder pads and shorts to full play. And now you want someone to drive somebody into the ground. And so I understand some of the reason why they do it, for the safety reasons, but also just the nature of the game is just moved away from like a physical run game, which is why when Pete is trying to do it or when the Baltimore is doing it, or I'm sure they're going to do some of it here, some people get frustrated with it because it feels so old and stuff. But man, that was football. You know what I'm saying? And but I think that's why some of the offensive line play suffers is because of that.
All right, as we get into the actual film stuff, just a reminder, ftmfantasy.com, sign up with promo code HAWKS, gets you 15% off. You're going to want to sign up for the Fantasy Football Plus package or the VIP package. That will get you Stats Hub, it gets you DVOA data, it gets you the access to the Discord groups where you can ask questions about, who to draft, which players to play each given week. But a lot of really great stuff over there at ftmfantasy.com. Promo code HAWKS, less than $8 a month. All right, Ray, we've got a couple of things to look at. And look at this. Can you see that?
Yeah, I see you, big dog.
That? The telestrator, we got it all going on, man.
Man, you got a PhD in that in like a couple weeks.
Yeah, it just took a little bit of tech paying attention. So this is the first play we're going to talk about. This is the Geno Smith pass to JSN. I have it from both angles, so we can watch it from both angles. Anything you want to talk about here prior to the play?
Well, first of all, just from this angle, I really wanted to show so sometimes if you go to football practices, whether it's whatever level it is, high school, college, NFL, and you'll see like the quarterbacks with either trash cans in different parts of the field, or they have nets. Some of the teams have nets with little squares, and you have to hit a different square. And you might think like, oh man, it looks like they're just playing like some game or something. But what they really are doing is visualizing the spot at which they want to put the ball for different passes. And sometimes that window is only as big as the top of a trash can. So you're not trying to hit the bottom of the trash can. You're not trying to make it tip off the top. You're trying to drop it right in the trash can. And to me, this throw right here is the epitome of that, because there is nowhere else for this ball to be except for exactly where it was for JSN to catch it. And you can only make that throw if you're dropping the ball in the trash can in practice on that throw, because that's not. Some people might think like, oh, it was luck. He just kind of threw it up for grabs. Nah, there are plays that you throw the ball up for grabs for like a DK Metcalf, and he's going to go up above everybody and catch it. But this is what you would call a trash can throw, because he put it right in the trash can, and then JSN just had to put his hands out there, and the ball fell right into it. And so sometimes, like when you're at practice or you see things and you're not sure why they're doing it, or understand the drill, this is how what you take from the practice field onto the game field and then execute it in the game. And believe it or not, that process can either keep a dude on a team or get you off a team, because some guys can do it in practice, but they can't take it to the game.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have some dudes though that can't do it in practice, but they kill it in the game. So you go like, yeah, we're gonna keep him. You know what I'm saying? And,
Yep.
but if you want to make it in any league, any football league, or any sport endeavor you're doing, you have to be able to take it from the practice field to the game field and then execute it in the game. My oldest son played basketball and could not go over his left shoulder. And so we trained it over and over and over, worked with a post dude that played the post in the NBA, and in practice was killing it, could not do it in the game. And honestly, he ended up playing like a Division II basketball. But I promise you, because he could not go over his left shoulder, kept him from going to Division I basketball, because they wanted to see it, and he couldn't take it from practice to the game. And so this is a situation where you're taking the drill, the muscle memory, the reps, all of that stuff from the practice field to the game, and then you make an incredible moment and catch right here.
Before we play it, just real quick on that. I played much less competitive sports than you, much lower level, but I played through high school, and anyone that's played competitive sports knows this phenomenon you're talking about, where practice, as much as you go through it, there is something that when you get into the game, the adrenaline and how it affects your body, and how, like, especially any fine motor things from shooting or touch passes, this kind of thing, like being able to calm yourself and actually do it the same way and get the same it's a skill. It's not something everybody has. And then also, we've talked about how Mike McDonald, Pete Carroll, other people try to create as much of a game atmosphere in practice as possible. The competition, everyone talks about it like, oh, whatever. When Mike McDonald has the entire team watching 1v1s, and they're all like, you got your entire teammates watching you, and it replicates a little bit of that adrenaline and like pressure that you're going to be under. And the closer you can get a practice rep to a game rep helps to figure out exactly what you're talking about. You agree with that?
Absolutely. I remember the first day I saw them do that, like I could feel my own adrenaline. Like, cause I'm like, oh wow, like that, like you have to do this one-on-one in front of everybody. Like normally the offensive line and defensive line is like almost in the lake somewhere, and nobody's paying any attention. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And like now the whole team, and now the people at practice is watching it, and all this different kind of stuff. And at first I was like, oh my gosh, like I don't know, like especially as a rookie, that might have been a little bit scary to me. But I do like that they're trying to, put you under that pressure, man. Like how are you going to perform? Like the cream rises to the top under that type of pressure. And so I like that. And it's different than the way Pete does it, but it's still you're trying to produce the same outcomes.
All right. So I'll start rolling it. Let me know if you want to pause or point anything out along the way here. We'll see it from both angles. So
so if you can go back to like, this is how you know that this is a play. He's thrown this ball in the trash can to that spot a million times, because when JSN is probably 5, 6, 7 yards down the field, the ball is already coming out. JSN hasn't even looked yet. JSN doesn't even know if he's the dude that's getting the ball yet. And the ball is already in the air because he's throwing it to a spot. He's not throwing it to, when you talk about throwing it to a spot, he's throwing it to the spot where that trash can was on the football field. He's not throwing it to JSN. So it's JSN's duty to run to the spot and expect the ball to be right there in the trash can. And so the ball is already in the air before JSN turns his head around to locate the ball, because he knows he's running to a spot. The ball's been thrown to the trash can. Let me run to the trash can, put my hands out, the ball falls right into it. All I got to do is secure it and get my feet down. And that's what he did. And to me, that is a from practice to the game, perfect example of that whole process.
Can you talk to us on from this angle about the offensive line play? What do you see from these guys? Because that pocket was pretty key to this happening, right?
Well, first of all, I wanted to, I wish I'd had a different angle, but I studied yesterday Charles Cross's stance from last year to this year. Because I'm like, he's more compact or something. And so what I noticed is that his stance is more narrow, and his knees are bent more. He's not, his right leg isn't as straight as it was last year. So he's in a more compact position. And then because his feet are more narrow, it gives you an opportunity to step and then come to balance. If your feet are too far apart and you step out, now you're stretched way out. All this time bench pressing and power cleaning and squatting just goes right out the door because you don't have a base to support the power that you have. But because his stance is a little bit more narrow, he's playing a little bit lower. And then I think the violence that Coach Huff has been asking him to be with his hands and stuff, his demeanor is different. So if you watch the whole play, last year I think he would have gotten pushed into the quarterback. This play right here, he takes on the bull rush and he sits down. He takes like these 2 little hop chop steps that they tell you to do, and then he stops him right at the quarterback. So you might go like, oh man, he got close to the quarterback, but close ain't to the quarterback. You know what I'm saying? And so I don't think you could have seen Charles Cross execute that block last year. But all of it came from just how you're starting. Like he hadn't even moved yet, but you're in a more powerful stance. You're in the stance that's going to promote more balance so that you can use that power. And then he's actually been more physical and more violent as a blocker than he has been. He's been a really smooth athlete, been able to kind of move laterally and slide with people. But he has struggled with some of the power at times. And so he's done a really good job. He did this a couple times in this game where he kind of sat down on the bull rush like this and stopped the rush, which I didn't see him doing a whole lot of that last year. And then if you take it all the way back again, exactly, the center and the guards kind of set the depth of the pocket and the tackle set the width of the pocket. But if you look at Bradford on this play, this is, if you can get this Bradford 98% of the time, he has a chance to be really special. Boom. He puts his hands on him, it's over. Like the dude is so strong and powerful that if his conditioning and he pays attention to the technique, he can do this to almost anybody because he's so big and strong. But the timing of his punch right there was beautiful. And that's the consistency. Like if he can do that consistently, then it's going to make it hard for Haynes to get on the field, because what they want out of Bradford is the consistency. I think that's why they created the competition between him and Haynes, because they want to see him up the consistency of how he plays. And you want to be able to see him do that to defensive tackles and defensive ends around the league at a more consistent basis, because this dude is a big, strong, powerful individual, and he's a very talented football player. But sometimes what separates the good from the great is what you're willing to pay attention to and what you're willing to give your time to. And he needs to give his time to being in great shape so that he can be that effective throughout the game and throughout the season, and then giving his attention to that type of technique, because he can be that type of player.
Let's keep rolling this one. And yeah, it just, I think the other thing I would point out is, I mean, the pocket is gorgeous, but also Is it part of the play design to create this throwing lane, or is it just the way it happened?
No, that's just the way it happened because of the way the defensive line rushed. They were doing some type of slant to one side kind of gaming deal, and so sometimes you get discombobulated like this. But I will say that for Geno, as much as he has escaped the pocket at times, like trying to do the Russell Wilson lookalike thing, that is not to Geno's benefit. This is a better situation for Geno because Geno's a better player if there is pressure when he can step up in the pocket and then slide out versus a player that reverses out and tries to outrun, does his big loop around and tries to outrun everybody to the corner and then make a throw. Like he's done it a few times, but a few times I think he realized like, I'm a little bit older. I can't quite turn the corner and I'm either going to throw it away. I'm going to take this 10-yard sack. And so that's why it's important to me for this offensive line and pass protection for the guards to really set the depth of the pocket so that Geno has a place to step up. Because if the outside rush is really effective when you get inside push, because then the quarterback has to either stay where he is or try to spin out or whatever, and you roll right into sacks. But if you can keep the depth of the pocket and give your quarterback space to step up, then you can run those speed rushes around the back of the quarterback. He can step up in the pocket and then slide out. And to me, that's when Geno is the most effective. Is when he can step up, throw the ball, or he can step up and slide out. Russell Wilson was more of a, man, I'm just going to spin out one way and create some space and run around and like he was great at that kind of stuff. But Geno is better at stepping up and moving versus spinning out and trying to run. And so that pocket is a great pocket for him. And then that window open up just based on how the defense rushed the quarterback.
Yeah, and just to your point, I mean, the trajectory of this pass, I mean, there's only one place that was going. I mean, just a gorgeous. I mean, this is why for me, there's not 32 quarterbacks in the NFL that can make that throw. I don't know if there's even 20 quarterbacks in the NFL that can make that throw consistently. Geno has things where he can make throws like this more often than a lot of other quarterbacks. It's whether or not he makes the right decisions and doesn't force it. Because he can make throws like this, sometimes he thinks he can do things that maybe he shouldn't do. But
also too though, it really, sometimes people will rail on a quarterback because he's not making a throw or he's not playing the way that they want him to play, and they just don't really understand how hard it is to play that position.
Yeah.
It is really hard because you're the top of a trash can they use is maybe maybe 1.5 feet, 2 feet, and you're having to throw a football from 20, 30, 40 yards away and to drop it right in that trash can. That's why Russell Wilson had one of the most beautiful deep balls ever. Because the ball would be in the air, then it's almost like it would fall off a cliff and it would just drop straight down, boom, right into the pocket because he had hit those trash cans so many times. And so it's a really tough position to play. These throws, sometimes they look easy, man, they are so hard. The timing of it, the strength of it, the vision that you have, all those different things is really hard to do.
All right, last play for this edition of Big Ray's Rewind. This is the Kenny McIntosh 56-yard run. We got it from both angles. You want me to play it once here?
Yeah, but I want to look at it from the end zone.
End zone angle. All right, so let's get to the end zone angle. All right.
Because this is I'll explain it to you before it happens so you can see what's going on. But to me, this is what makes San Francisco's run game unbelievably difficult to do because of all of the eye candy that's happening, that these second level defenders, like you're not necessarily trying to impact the defensive line. You're trying to impact these second level defenders. And if you watch this play, you have fly motion going to your left and when the ball snaps, and then you have this other motion who you just highlighted. Well, you have fly motion going to the right, and then you have this.
It's got crisscross motion.
Yeah, to the left, and the offensive line is blocking as if they're going to the right. And so, if you just let the play run,
So he's going to. I think this is Derek Young, and then you've got Laviska Shenault, who ends up coming out, this way, and
right, and then the offensive lines they're going the other way. They're going as if they're going with the fly motion. They're stepping to their right.
I see what you're saying.
You see what I'm saying? And now look at all the second level defenders. They're flying with the angle of the running back. I mean, with the angle of the line and with that fly motion, right? And so now they're already overthinking the play. And if you let it keep running, number 30 is the only person that maybe has a chance to make this block. Stop right there. Like, if you can go back just about half a second. Right there. How the heck does he know where the ball is? You see what I'm saying? He's already flying with the motion to his left, and then the line is coming straight at him, but then there's motion going back to his right, and then he has this massive thing of humanity in front of him. So you don't even have to really block him. And the what made me think about this play was there's a play last year in the red zone against the 49ers where they ran a play similar to this, and they didn't even block Bobby Wagner. He got lost just like this, and they ended up handing the ball to Christian McCaffrey, and he walked in for a touchdown because he was going with the fly motion. There's another motion going the other way. He has this massive humanity in front of him. You're trying to see where everything is. Oh, too late, touchdown. And that's exactly what happens here. And that's what I love about this offense and what Grubb is doing, because it creates angles where you get an advantage with the angle, and it creates eye discipline. And if you don't have the eye discipline, you're going to end up with this more times than not. And I can remember all the way back to when Richard Sherman was here, and they asked him, man, like, what is so difficult about defending, Kyle Shanahan's offense in San Francisco? He said, man, like, they can make every play look just like every other play. And so you don't know if it's a run or if it's a pass or if it's a pass or if it's a run. And so that split second of hesitation creates a window for McIntosh to get through the hole. And then all he has to do is break one tackle and he takes it to the house. And so to me, when you're watching this offense and you're watching the success of it, man, do not underestimate the movement, because it helps. It slows things down. It makes the defense, the second level defense, hesitate for a second. And that second that they hesitate gives the guard enough time to get up. Like, Christian Haynes barely even touched this dude. And even if he didn't touch him, he would have had a hard time making a tackle, because it would have been an arm tackle to a running back who's running downhill. And then look at the space between the tight end and I think that's Christian Haynes right there. And then you have Chenault, I think that is coming up.
That's Chenault right here.
41 has to defend area space that's 5-6 yards wide, and two players coming at him. Like, that is putting a whole lot of pressure on one guy that can stop the play. You know what I'm saying? You have a it doesn't even matter how big Chenault is coming at him, but you have the dude with the ball behind another guy, and you have 6 yards of space to defend. That is when the Seahawks talk about chasing edges. That's what they're doing. They're not talking about chasing the edges of setting the edge on defense. They're talking about how do we get the edge to be successful on every single play. And so in this thing, they're chasing edges, and they got the edge through all the movement, and then they got the edge through putting all the pressure on number 41. You have to be Superman to make. You have to be Ray Lewis to make that play. You know what I'm saying? And he is not Ray Lewis.
This is amazing, Ray. And the other thing I noticed, as we'll rewind this, safety. I don't think he's taken a single. I don't think he's moved. So you talk about players taking false steps, right? Like, that guy. Like, I'm going through different frames here. That guy is like, he's basically frozen by this motion that you're talking about. Like, watch 31 here. He's like,
he can't figure out what to do.
He doesn't know what to do on this play.
Yeah, like the ball is all the McIntosh already has the ball. It's almost at the line of scrimmage, and 31 is still backpedaling.
Yes.
You see what I'm saying? Like, that's chasing edges, because then 31 is a guy to get stiff armed because he doesn't have an angle to make the tackle. And that little bit of hesitation creates those opportunities.
I love this, and watching it real time and then watching it back. I'm a big fan of Laviska Shenault. I love physical wherever you can find it on a football team. And I love it at receiver. I love it at positions where it's maybe less common. You talk about the 49ers, part of their edge physically is not just Trent Williams and Nick Bosa. it is Brandon Ayuk being a physical blocker, Jawan Jennings being a physical blocker, George Kittle, like at some of these quote skill positions. I think Laviska Shenault is of that ilk, and you watch him. I don't want to be 41 with Laviska Shenault running full speed to just like crack you here, right? Like, that's not, I mean, that's not little Tyler Lockett. No offense to Tyler, but like, you know, that's a different type of athlete being involved in the run game.
Yeah. And some people might say like, oh no, you got lucky. No, this is the design of the play creates this opportunity. Because like, just imagine if 31 right now is running over there. He's in a better position to make the tackle, but he hesitated enough because he doesn't know where the freaking ball is. And then by the time he reacts, he doesn't have the proper angle to make the tackle, and then it makes the stiff arm more effective. And now you have a 56-yard house call.
Yeah, let's watch this, because 31, this is what you get. This is what you get for being a step slow, baby.
Yeah. And that's why, like, this is why I like watching when you get to see the all 22 and you get to slow it down and not just see the TV version. Because when you understand the philosophy of the play caller and the design of the play, you can see how it worked the way it's not like they got lucky and this happened, or hey, 50, McIntosh made some incredible, miraculous, heroic run. The play worked the way it was designed to work. The philosophy worked the way it was designed to work, which was they were chasing edges and they found edges, and they got those edges by the lack of eye discipline of the second level defenders, because those are the guys that are trying to weed through everything to kind of see what's happening, and they can blow a play. Like, for instance, in that first preseason game, remember when the two linebackers read the play and they stepped up in and they both had the tackle, right? So when their window is clean and it's pretty direct, it's easy for them to flow right into that and make the tackle. But when they have to stop for a second and be like, oh, like, flat, whoa, that's all. That's maybe like 2 seconds. Like, that's all you need. Like, and in a run game, you're either trying to get the numbers advantage, or you're trying to get the angle advantage, or you're trying to get that type of deception, eye discipline advantage. And in that situation, they had a little bit of all of it happening.
Yeah, I saw a stat somewhere, Ray, that preseason, they don't show all this stuff anyway, but the Seahawks have had motion on 70% of their offensive snaps. The only team that's had more was the Miami Dolphins. And I just think people nationally just don't know what they're about to see with Ryan Grubb's offense. The amount of motion, the amount of misdirection. This isn't new. This is what he was doing at Washington, and it's not like some kind of Chip Kelly gimmicky thing. It's like fundamentally sound but modern football, and I can't wait to see DK Metcalf, Geno Smith, Kenneth Walker, which people still haven't even seen him in this offense yet. And also the offensive line, I would guess they're gonna get better and better in this type of thing. And I wonder, last thing I'll ask you before we're running late and I want to let you go, but does that give an offensive lineman an advantage in terms of creating an angle that they might not have otherwise had?
Hey, Brian, I've been saying this for years when people have been complaining about the offensive line play here. And I go, you have to look at the play caller and the play design, because that has just as much to do with offensive line development as the actual skill that the player has. So if you're not calling plays that are putting them in situations where they can be successful, then they're not going to be successful. I mean, Sean McVay said it the best. Like, when they design plays, they think offensive line first. How can they make it as simple for the offensive line as possible for them to be successful in their block? And then they build up on that. And that's a totally different approach to calling plays. And so to me, this offense allows for the protection to be better, because you're going to run pass plays off of this same type of action. It allows for the run game to be better, and it allows for this offensive line to show itself better for the skill that it has and for the talent it has for it to show itself better.
Ray, man, this is a treat every single time, every single conversation. We're going to get to do this every other week. So that means after the week after the Seahawks play their first game, we will come back and do the next edition of Big Ray's Rewind. And everybody in chat is freaking out. They're saying they're going to be taking notes next time. They feel like they didn't have their notebooks ready.
Well, I'm gonna give you a test.
There will be quizzes. There will be quizzes, man. That is Big Ray Roberts. Hey, Big Ray, anything that people should know that's either coming up or pay attention to, other than obviously check out, your podcast? Anything that people should go to?
I don't have anything going with the podcast. Hopefully, I'll be back in the studio next week. It gets hard when they're in training camp and the people I need are running training camp. But I will say this: I do a lot of work for Special Olympics North America. And we're always looking for volunteers. And so Special Olympics Washington, they do events all year long. Most people think that Special Olympics is like a Olympic event that happens in the summer, but they do events. They have leagues for basketball leagues, bowling leagues, tennis leagues, softball leagues, all these different leagues. And they need volunteers for coaches. They need volunteers for people to help set up and break down situations. So if you're looking for a place to kind of give back and be a good person for some people that really need it, reach out to Special Olympics Washington and see what type of volunteer opportunities they need. And sometimes you never know, it turns into like a job opportunity. But I promise you this: you're not going to volunteer there and leave the same person. You'll have more empathy, you'll have more sympathy, you'll have more understanding. Your perspective on what inclusion is will change, and you'll be a changed and better person for it.
Excellent advice. Someone who's had a child in Special Olympics, as well as, been involved with that organization, different types of ways. Huge second to what Ray just said. I think it's a great way to get involved. So, man, Ray, looking forward to seeing you next time. And thank you so much for giving us a little education this week, as Big Ray's Rewind is just going to be a huge part of how we have fun together this year.
I appreciate it, Brian. And like I said, man, just keep doing you, keep working hard, keep trying to learn. Like even me, I there's parts of the game that I still need to be, understand better. So I go to people and ask questions. And so I think the more informed you are about the game, the better you can, formulate your opinions and positions and things like that, and sound like you know what you're talking about. And so I have a lot of respect for that. So keep doing what you're doing, bro.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much. That was Big Ray Roberts. Will be with us every other week for Big Ray's Rewind. And be sure, 6:00 tonight, we are having the Real Hawk Talk prediction show. It is going to be everybody. Myself, Evan Hill, Nathan Ernst, Dana O'Gorman, Derek Gebby, Josh Cashman, Trey Howell. I'm probably forgetting Jeff Simmons. So we're all going to be on the show together tonight at 6 doing our 2024 predictions. It's going to be a ton of fun. So make sure you're there for that show tonight. I will also be definitely back on a little bit later this morning. We're already getting some waiver information, and I will have a separate show on that, and we'll talk about practice squad. And then I also will be doing the John Schneider press conference later today. Can't wait to ask John some questions. So lots of stuff coming your way. Keep an eye here on the YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe and click the bell to get notified. Like if you haven't already. Remember, the more you watch, the more you click like, the more you have a chance of getting a free membership should other people gift, like we had some gifted memberships today. So as much engagement as possible is great. And head over to the Instagram channel, click follow there so we can grow that. But really appreciate y'all. Be sure, if you haven't already, go to ftnfantasy.com, sign up with promo code Hawks. Get access for less than $8 a month. You will really be glad that you did. I am a subscriber, and I have been even before we started this partnership. So keep an eye on it. All right, folks. Appreciate you all. I am Brian Nemhaus. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at HawkBlogger. This has been episode 157 of Hawk Blogger Mornings. Take care, y'all.